All right, what's going on, everybody? Ryan Ogren here, and today we're going to be going through why hyperscalers prefer front of the meter power versus behind the meter power. Okay, and this goes to the colos. This also applies to other data center tenants. And just to preface this with a big disclaimer, these data center tenants, they will do behind the meter when they have to, but front of meter power is by far their first choice for very specific reasons. I'm going to be going through those reasons today. But real quick, for those that don't know me and you're new here, I'm Ryan Ogren. I'm a former pro baseball player, but now I'm a private equity investor in the data center and energy infrastructure space. And I had to learn this industry from the ground up. And there's not a lot of content out there that's showing what's happening in the industry right now. So I think this is very important to start to hammer on right now for two reasons. One, it's our deal flow. We get all of our deals coming through our LinkedIns primarily, so make sure you connect with us over there. But also, I figured YouTube's a great place to be. So that's why we're making these videos. Obviously, we're going to have some deal flow come from it. So if you have a deal, you have a site, you have a project that you want to get our thoughts on, we have our website below. Click on the website, go to our page, contact us, and we'll take a look at it. And number two is, I'm 28 as of recording this video. I'm 28 years old as of recording this video. I know I look a little older, but there's not a lot of younger people in this industry. And it's a weird thing. And obviously, it's complex, it's capital intensive, and it's very challenging. And obviously, it's not a mature industry by any means. But at the same time, there's not a lot of young people in it, and we need to get more young people in it. And the reason being, if we have all these assets that were being built right now, and the guys doing these deals, 40s, 50s, 60s, in 20 years from now, all of them are going to be retired and out of the game. So that's just going to leave us with my generation. And if we don't have my generation right now working from the ground up, when this technology is being developed, then we're going to be in big trouble. So it's very important that we make these videos, draw more people, young, talented people into this space. And that's my plan with these videos as well. So deal flow and then bringing more talent into the game. So without further ado, if you find these videos useful, consider liking and subscribing and sharing with your friend, maybe dropping a comment. But without further ado, let's get into it. I think I said without further ado a couple times already. So the very first reason that hyperscalers want front of the meter power as their first choice is, scale. So front of the meter lets them draw, almost unlimited load growth. And it's not obviously unlimited, but behind the meter power means the generator is physically on your site. That caps you at whatever megawatt that unit can produce. That's it, right? So hyperscalers don't want caps. AI, specifically an AI data center, they want to be able to scale this thing up as far as AI can possibly go. So if they have any kind of bottlenecks or any kind of cap on a site, then the CapEx, obviously, the economic model on it, obviously is limited. So a cloud campus might go from 60 megawatts, 300 megawatts to 900 megawatts over build out. And you need multiple behind the meter upgrades to go with it. Turbines, multi-unit combined cycle power plants, and constantly rebuilding and adding on to that plant, which is just hard to permit, hard to expand, and hard to maintain. But it's also very expensive. These turbines, one 30 megawatt turbine can be $30 million. So it's very, very expensive, and it's a massive CapEx. Also takes up substantial acreage. So these power plants, you're talking about, if it's a big power plant, you can be 50, 75 acres, right? You can obviously have, some issues with that. And there's guys that are saying, well, Ryan, we could build our power plant on 5 acres. Not talking about you, okay? So front of the meter means you just connect to the utilities transmission system, which is the grid. So they're the ones that are going to be selling you the power. Front of the meter is the utility. And they can scale you infinitely by adding generation onto the grid side. So any grid project that is out there, and they get the utility, the power generation project selling power back to the grid, the utility then has that opportunity to sell that power to you or whoever they really want. So when a data center is thinking about front of the meter, behind the meter power, obviously front of the meter makes the most sense, because if there is a power plant here that's coming online, that data center might get a little bit of power there. And then there's another project. This data center is going to be able to benefit from all of that and just continue to ramp up that power. And as the insides of a data center advance with their cooling technologies, with more efficient chips and all this, that, and the other, and the racks get a little bit more, and our thermodynamics get a little bit more efficient, everything happens. These data centers are going to be more efficient than ever. They're going to keep optimizing. but still, they'll still have access to scalable power. So that's why they really want this. So that's number one. Number two is risk transfer. So they don't want to operate the power plants. And I had to learn this the hard way. I was on a call with one of the hyperscalers trying to pitch them a big power infrastructure asset. And they're like, look, dude, we just like do not want this. We don't like the optics, but we would like to take power from it. And so that's when I learned this one. But owning a power plant means O&M risk, means forced outage risk, fuel supply contracting, environmental compliance, EPA and state emissions regulations, workforce issues, black start requirements, and you name it. There's many different other things that could happen to this, lawsuits, this, that, and the other. And hyperscalers, they don't want that risk. Think about it. Do you want to, if your main game is this, do you really want to have to play in a game like this? Or do you really want to have to play over here in the power generation space when there's a lot of guys that would love to do this and that's their true expertise and you can just pay them to do it? They're looking at it as like, hey, you guys will just pay you to do it. So then when you F up, the liability's on you and we can just sue you. I don't know if they're thinking that, but that's kind of the idea, right? So they just don't want that risk. And the utilities and IPPs exist specifically to handle it. So it's literally their bread and butter. So front of the meter, the utility, IPP, you handle all that. Just give us the delivered power, the delivered megawatt. Okay, so that's number two. Number three is multi-source redundancy. So hyperscalers need, N+1, N+2, and even 2N redundancy at the power level. So a single behind-the-meter plant is a single point of failure. And front-of-the-meter power, multiple generators are feeding the same substation, plus regional grid redundancy. If one generation asset goes down, they have the grid. If the grid goes down, then they also need a redundancy on the backside, which would be behind the meter. So this redundancy is for AI loads is insanely critical. The uptimes that they are requiring for these particular data centers is like 5 nines right now. So it's a big deal breaker for their reliability standards. So they're looking for this. The 2N is by far the best redundancy. Obviously, it's expensive. And I'll do a video on what redundant setups that I've seen out there. So if you guys have other video ideas, by the way, drop a comment below and I'll create a video on it if I can actually speak to it educationally. So number 4 is emissions and optics. So a hyperscaler owning a power plant, especially a gas plant, is bad optics for them. A lot of them are these big tech companies, right? So they all had ESG and net zero goals from 2030 was what they were. I think they all moved them back 5 years just based off of this craze, but it's bad optics, it's bad PR technically. It opens them up to direct emissions responsibility, creates climate activist pressure because a lot of their companies are the greens, not the green. A lot of their just positioning is on the greener side of things. I don't have an opinion on whether that's good or bad, but I do see their point, and I understand what they're looking for. These are technology companies. They're not here to generate power. So it's kind of an interesting thing, and it makes them look like they're dirty cloud operators when they're not, right? So this is interesting just based off the fact that the optics of them owning a power plant can hurt them. Now, if the power plant is green technically, like nuclear, and obviously there's nuclear waste, but nuclear, like Microsoft has no problem owning 3 Mile Island and restarting it. So it's kind of an interesting thing when you see Microsoft buy a full nuclear power plant that's kind of shut down. So if the utility or IPP owns the plant, remember, this is exactly what they do. They get indirect emissions, and that indirect emissions, technically the accounting does apply. So it's way easier for ESG reporting and permitting, but it just makes the optics look a little bit better. So this one is not as strong of a point, but I have seen this one firsthand that they did not want to own the actual power infrastructure themselves, depending on the optics. Okay, so number 5, rate stability and long-term economics. So through front of the meter, hyperscalers negotiate like a million different things: special tariff structures, economic development riders, long-term PPAs, guaranteed block rates, grid firming credits. They do all kinds of different things. Economic development riders could be like a community benefit agreement. And you really can't do most of this with behind the meter. Okay, so front of the meter also lets them arbitrage, wholesale power pricing, wholesale power prices, locational margin pricing, curtailment credits. Behind the meter, you're stuck with whatever your gas cost is plus fixed O&M. So pretty much so far, the main things is the main ones is that you have multi-source redundancy for these sites. You also have access to all the power generation projects that are coming online in the future for that particular grid. They get some of that power, so they don't have to really wear all that risk. Also, the economics of getting access to that power, someone else is putting that CapEx together and then selling the power to the grid, and then they can just buy the power. So it really is a no-brainer for them if the grid interconnect timelines were a little bit cleaner. So then also, if they're just connecting power to a data center or to the grid, nobody knows really where the power is coming from. It's coming from the power generation that's on the grid, but they're just taking power from the grid, which seems like it's green energy. So location flexibility. So front of the meter, lets them build on relatively cheap land, tax advantage industrial sites, regions with better fiber, cooler climates, better water availability, if it is there. Behind the meter would technically, tie you to where you could build a power plant, where you could physically have a power plant. So you do give up your best site options because you must co-locate with the generation. And you can build a data center, wherever you can build a data center, but you can't always build a power plant where you can build a data center. There is one site we were working on, 200 acres, and it was close to a power plant, but the town would have let a data center get built there. But when the second they wanted to do on-site generation, they nixed that immediately. So that's something good to note. And then number 7, behind the meter requires hyperscalers to manage outages. So this kind of goes back to their responsibility. A turbine trip on behind the meter, the data center just takes a hit, which they're not going to accept. Turbine trip on front of the meter, the grid shares the entire shock. Spinning reserves kick in. Grid inertia protects the site. The utility fixes the outage, not the hyperscaler. So there's a little bit more of a buffer. And hyperscalers want zero responsibility for forced outages. So if they have behind the meter power, then they are in charge. So front of the meter supports renewable matching requirements. So companies like Amazon and Google, they have these net zero goals and 24/7 carbon-free energy goals. It's requiring them to match renewable production across time zones using grid storage, integrating grid resources, sophisticated power purchasing, accounting. You cannot meet 24/7 CFE on behind the meter. There's no diversity supply. This is something I don't know too much about. So if you guys knew more about this, comment below and maybe we can jump on a call and you can explain this. But just figured this was good to. I do know about it, but I don't know too much about it. It's not my expertise, and you can tell by the way I'm talking about it. But also number 9, front of the meter lets them future-proof for AI superclusters. So there's estimations that AI loads are going to push clusters to 500 megawatts, 1 gigawatt, 1.5 gigawatt plus campuses. Nobody wants a 1.5 gigawatt behind the meter power plant inside a hyperscale campus. The risk, the land, the noise, the heat, the scale, it becomes absurd. And then you start to plot every time you want to scale this up, you have another behind the meter power plant on site. So front of the meter is the only realistic long-term format. Now, it's not to say you can't have multiple power plants on a particular site that is going back onto the grid, and then you have right next door a potential data center that is taking power from the grid. That's totally fine. It just happens to be the power generation happens to be close by. So the bottom line, these hyperscalers want front of the meter because it gives them scale, reliability, risk transfer, rate optimization, ESG compliance, load flexibility, and they'll use behind the meters for stopgaps or redundancy or when a site is otherwise impossible. But their global preference still to this day, I'm recording this in November of 2025, for very strategic reasons, is front of the meter power controlled by the utility. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions on this, or you think something was accurate or inaccurate, or you want me to go into, comment below. This industry is growing fast, so anything I could have said in this video could definitely be out of date by the time you're watching this. So if you have any comments or there's something you want to correct me on, please comment below, and we'll certainly work on fixing it. I don't know everything in this industry, but I have a good hold on it. And so, part of this, making these videos, is so I can continue to learn as well. So if you guys have any questions, comments, drop them below. Consider liking and subscribing, and I'll catch you on the next one. All right, see ya.